Hello, and thank you for joining us on this ceasefire moment, where we listen to understand, not necessarily to agree. We're taking a look at Acts 15, a chapter that shapes the early believers and answers a timeless question: what does it take to be saved? We'll go verse by verse, unpacking the historical context, the debate, and the decisions that still echo today. This is when the Jerusalem Council happened, around AD 48 and 49, and it's a turning point for Gentiles, or non-members of Judaism. Let's get started. Acts 15 unfolds about 18 years after Jesus' ministry. The assembly of believers is growing beyond its Jewish roots, especially in Antioch, Syria, 340 miles north of Jerusalem. It's about a 2 to 3 week journey on foot. People from all nations outside of Judaism are joining, but a controversy has erupted. The people outside of Judaism are commonly referred to as Gentiles. In the version we're using today, the literal standard version, they're referred to as nations. And a certain group, having come down from Judea, were teaching the brothers, if you are not circumcised after the custom of Moses, you are not able to be saved. This certain group are referred to as the circumcision party. They're likely the false brothers that Paul calls out in Galatians 2:4. They're legalistic, insisting on circumcision, and say that it's required for salvation. In John 7, we see that Jesus speaks about circumcision. He says, Jesus answered and said to them, I did one work and you all wonder. Because of this, Moses has given you the circumcision. Not that it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And on a Sabbath you circumcise a man. Jesus is telling us that circumcision didn't come from Moses. It came from the patriarchs. 600 years before Moses was ever born, it was given to Abraham. If we take a look at Ezekiel 44, 7 through 9, it has some interesting text talking about uncircumcised strangers. In the Old Testament, the term stranger or foreigner is related to the term Gentiles or nations in the New Testament. Let's take a look. In your bringing in sons of a stranger, uncircumcised of heart and uncircumcised of flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to defile it, even my house, in your bringing near my bread, fat, and blood, those are offerings, and they break my covenant by all your abominations. And you have not kept the charge, you is the tribes of Israel, of my holy things, and you set others for keeping my charge in my sanctuary for you. Thus said Lord Yahweh, no son of a stranger, uncircumcised of heart and uncircumcised of flesh, comes into my sanctuary, even any son of the stranger who is in the midst of the sons of Israel. Ezekiel 44 is talking about non-Israelites who are both uncircumcised at heart and uncircumcised in flesh, being brought into the house of God and breaking God's covenant by all of Israel's abominations. If you have studied some of Paul's writings talking about circumcision, these phrases should sound familiar to you. Let's look at this word, saved. The Greek word for saved here comes with the meaning to rescue or deliver spiritually. In Hebrew, Yasha carries the similar meaning, tied to divine salvation, even echoing Jesus' name, Yeshua, meaning salvation. Verse 2. There having been, therefore, not a little dissension and debate to Paul and Barnabas with them, they arranged for Paul and Barnabas and certain others of them to go up to the apostles and to the elders to Jerusalem about this question. Paul and Barnabas have been on a missionary journey. They're fresh from it, and they've seen Gentiles saved without circumcision. They push back hard, so the assembly of believers sends them to Jerusalem. This is the assembly of the believers in Antioch, are sending them up to Jerusalem to get settlement on what the apostles and the elders or the council believe. Paul writes around this time of Acts chapter 19, the book of Romans. And here we see him writing in chapter 3. When then is the boasting? It was excluded. By what law? Of works? No, but by a law of faith. Therefore, we reckon a man to be declared righteous by faith, apart from works of law. Is he only the God of Jews and not also of nations? Yes, also of nations, since there is one God who will declare righteous circumcision by faith and uncircumcision through faith. Do we then make law useless through faith? Let it not be. Indeed, we established a law. This law here is talking about Torah, which is referring to the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Numbers in what we call the Old Testament. Let's go on to verse 3. They indeed then have been sent forward by the assembly, were passing through Phoenicia and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the nations, and they were causing great joy to all the brothers. This word assembly, it's translated as church in a lot of versions, but here in the Literal Standard Version, they've chosen the word assembly. However, the Greek word ecclesia means called out or called together. It's referring to a gathering of people. We might say a crowd or a meeting today. The Hebrew word kahal also means an assembly or congregation. It is used throughout the books of Moses to refer to the Israelite camp when they gathered together. The camp included foreigners or sojourners. These are people who were not direct descendants of Jacob and Israel. The word commonly translated as Gentiles is referring to people of many nations. That's why the Literal Standard Version uses the word nations here. And at times, it can even include those of Jewish descent who are not keeping the ways of Judaism, same as foreigners or sojourners from the book of Moses. And having come to Jerusalem, there were received by the assembly the apostles and the elders. They also declared as many things as God did with them. This council is about to address some practices which were just beginning in Antioch, where Paul and Barnabas had come from. Jerusalem has been predominantly Jewish. However, Antioch has had a significant amount of Gentiles or nations or foreigners, and was the early epicenter for Gentiles, followers of Jesus, and the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.